Hello, everyone. My name is Father Alex Gusedis. I serve as the director of the Center for Family Care. We offer webinars on a regular basis to address the many issues that our faithful confront on a daily basis. And we have a very important topic to discuss this afternoon. The title is Caregiver Love Thyself, the importance of self care through the holiday season. We're blessed to have three very capable women who are on the front lines of caregiving, either in their personal lives or in the various ministries that they are involved in. I'll have them introduce themselves in a moment. Just a little bit of housekeeping. Uh, Although we have a few questions to begin the process, we want our listeners and our viewers to also be able to forward any questions that they may have. You'll notice at the top of your screen, there's a Q&A box. Feel free throughout the webinar to forward questions. Also, if there are those who are not able to be with us live today, the webinar will be archived, will be available on both Philopticos resource pages as well as our Facebook and website page as well. So I want to introduce President Melanie Di Stefano, Paulette Giannakopoulos, and Theodora Ziongas. Ladies, take a moment, introduce yourselves so that people can get to know who you are. President, why don't you start?
Okay, I'm Presbytera Melanie DiStefano. I work as the resource developer at the Center for Family Care and manage the Fully Human Ministry, which seeks to provide resources and remove stigmas for families who have disabilities. I'm also a full-time caregiver for my son, Michael, who's a teenager who has various cognitive and physical disabilities.
Thank you. Paulette?
I'm Paulette Giannakopoulos, and I'm the Director of Social Services at the Greek Orthodox Ladies Philoptochos Society, the national office. I've been in this position for several years, and prior to that, I was at the executive level at nonprofit organizations in New York City, and I've also taught in the social work schools at Fordham, New York University, and in the School of Urban Affairs at Hunter College.
Thank you, Paulette. Theodora?
Yeah, hi, my name's Theodora Ziongas, and I'm presently director of a North program, which is a naturally occurring retirement community in Woodside, Queens. And I have extensive experience on social services, also at the executive level of profits, both in the Greek community through Greek Children's Fund, but also very in oncology through American Cancer Society, Cancer Care, and have worked with Philoptochos closely many years through various positions, helping out the Greeks that we served, and also co-facilitating support groups with Paul on the National Philoptochos on oncology, but also quite a few caregivers groups, which was very particularly rewarding since we saw that there was such a big need. And we were able to provide that service to our fellow Orthodox Christians. So thank you for this opportunity as well.
Thank you, ladies, for your introductions. Before we move into some of the questions, I want to share some data points that comes to us from the Family Caregiver Alliance. These are some really interesting numbers that I think can set the table for the importance of having this webinar and the degree to which caregivers live their lives. Listen to a few of these bullet points. More than 50 million Americans, most of whom are women 50 years old or over, provide unpaid caregiving to a loved one who has a chronic or acute illness or who is approaching the end of their life. Second bullet point, care recipients include parent or parent-in-law, spouse, grandparent, sibling, adult disabled child, or child under the age of 18 with physical or mental disabilities. Third bullet point, many caregivers are employed and are raising children of their own. Next, the average length of time a caregiver provides unpaid care is 4.5 years. On average, those who don't live with their loved ones provide over 20 hours per week in caregiving. Those who live with their care recipient spend 37 hours a week. And finally, caregivers provide an estimated $470 billion in free labor each year. This is just touching the surface in terms of the importance and the intensity of this topic. So maybe just as a general way of connecting the statistics with the humanity of this all. Maybe if each of you can say a few words about what it means to be a caregiver. What are some of the blessings and challenges that each of you are aware of?
Well, for every
Melanie,
family, the caregiving tasks differ depending on what the needs of the loved one are. And the timing of caregiving also usually is not something that's planned. Somebody may go visit a parent and find that there's no food in the refrigerator, or it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon and mom is still in her nightgown. Dad didn't call you at 9 in the morning like he's been doing for years. And you suddenly realize that something is changing in terms of your parents' abilities to take care of themselves. Are caregivers prepared to step up to the plate? Quite honestly, most are not, especially when it comes to needing to balance the rest of their lives along with whatever their caregiving responsibilities are. As Father Alex said in his intro from the Family Care Alliance, many caregivers are employed, whether full or part-time. They may be raising children of their own. They may be volunteers. There are different responsibilities that people have. And it's like, sometimes it's like balancing on a tightrope over the Grand Canyon in gale force winds, trying to figure out how you're going to balance the rest of your life along with your caregiving responsibilities. The bottom line is that it's not easy. So what are the actual tasks? Some people only need limited help with basic household tasks. It could be meal preparation and shopping. It could be light housekeeping. It could be transporting the person to their different appointments. Others need others have more complicated tasks. They could be such as transferring the person from bed to a chair, showering and bathing. And in terms of that, is there a shower stall or is there a bathtub that the person needs to be able to get into? Do you have grab bars? Where can you get grab bars? Toileting. Some people need help with toileting. So do you need to install a raised toilet seat or a frame around the commode? Do you need a urinal? Do you need a bedside commode? Does the person need help with dressing? Do you have one of those grab reachers so that the person can at least participate in dressing and putting on their pants, on putting on socks? Does the person need help with eating, with helping to feed them? What kinds of foods are you giving them so that they can do as much as possible by themselves? Yet other people who need caregiving need 24-hour supervision in order to ensure their physical, mental, and financial safety, such as medication management, symptom monitoring. If the person is showing signs of dementia, are you seeing that their cognitive deficits are growing as time passes? What do you do about that? The safety precautions to prevent falls. Do you have carpeting does the person have carpeting that needs to be rolled up so that they don't trip? Do you need to improve the lighting in your loved one's home? If there's a doorway with a door saddle, do you need to remove the saddle so that a wheelchair can go from one room to another easier? And things like bill paying, especially if there are cognitive or vision impairments. Just about all caregivers need to remain in contact with their loved ones' healthcare providers and supervise the healthcare providers, and many caregivers involve themselves with advocating for policies and programs to ensure that the resources needed for caregiving are available. Dora, you want to get into some of the positives of caregiving?
I forgot to mention that I'm also caring for my 96-year-old mom, in addition to working full time. And also took care of my dad, during actually post-COVID. When COVID struck, I had to move in with them out in Long Island, even though I work in the city. So actually being a caregiver can be, although very stressful at times, a lot of it can be very difficult and trying, can be very rewarding. I cherish this time that I've had with my parents because, growing up, we may not have had the time to really share some things with them. My parents, towards the end, they went through the war, the Civil War, a lot of challenges in Greece before they immigrated to this country. And I think it was just too painful to really talk about it when they were younger. But towards the end of life, I think they started sharing a lot of those experiences. And it was an eye-opener for me and my other sisters. I was able to share it with them. And just getting closer to them, being able to cherish the time and the development of the relationship, which we may not have been able to before, and being able to give back to them during time that we may not have been able to before.
Thank you, Theodora. Rosetta, any thoughts on just the role of the caregiver and some of the blessings and challenges from your unique perspective?
Yeah, I'd like to speak from a parent perspective. I think all the things that Paulette listed, I was resonating with. We're not, when we sign up to be a parent, the expectation is not that we will likely forever be caring for our child, but it's a reality for many of us. And so I think the challenges over the years have shifted, but at the core of the challenges is just this false expectation of what family life should be. And when the demands are intense, it shifts how you have to operate as a family and how you see your child, their future unfolding. So those things are obviously challenging. I never thought I never went to nursing school, but I am very much like a nurse for my son. I was never educated to become a teacher, and yet I'm called to be his therapist, his speech therapist, his occupational therapist, because of course he doesn't receive that every day. So there are roles that I have to play, and that stretches me, but it's also a blessing because it grows me and helps me to become more aware of others' needs. I get outside of myself. And I think there's a special, of course, when you're a parent, you love your child so much, but there are stressful times. But I've come to a place of acceptance. And I think one of the beautiful blessings is just recognizing that I have Christ in my midst with my son. Jesus identified with the least of his brethren. And I'm not trying to say Michael is the least of anyone, but he is someone who most people would consider, although I wouldn't. So what I'm saying is he has the most needs. He has intensive needs. And so there's something hard to describe about that. But when somebody's simple, there's such a special beauty and light about that person. And I've grown to appreciate that more and more.
One of the things that I'd like to add is one of the things that we hear in our support groups is a caregiver saying, this isn't what I signed up for. During the course of our support group, though, one of the things that happens is the caregiver realizes also, and they knew it in the back of their minds, but they realize that this also isn't what their loved one signed up for either. This isn't what they planned. And that helps balance things out. That helps keep things in perspective. And that's very important to understand.
I
That's a
also,
good point.
it's the crises in our lives that make us examine ourselves, our place in the world, our relationships, and what help us move forward in many ways, because otherwise we're just going through everyday motions. But any kind of crisis is what makes us really look into ourselves and our relationships and examine and move forward.
And that's a good segue, Dora. To this point, we've been talking about those whom we care for. Let's change the perspective in terms of maybe some questions caregivers have to really ask themselves and assess how they are doing physically, socially, mentally, emotionally. Can we talk a little bit more about the caregiver's role and what they need to do for their own self-care?
Well, I always say, we always say this in our support group. The advice they give you on the plane is always put the oxygen mask on yourself, because then, so you can then help the other person that you may need to help. So being, I think as a caregiver, it's important to look at, the stress, try to see, how, who else can I call in to help? Am I managing this? Am I able to manage this? Um, do I need to request some help? Very often people are reluctant to ask other family members or people in the community or even their church for assistance. And it can become overwhelming. So I think it's important to, my needs being met, of course, they're not going to be met the same way they were before, but at what point do I need to ask for help or look at my own self-care, because then I won't be able to care for my loved one in the way that I would like to.
On a more practical basis also, I think caregivers need to ask themselves if they're getting enough sleep. Are they eating properly? Are they taking charge of their own health? Caregivers oversee and supervise their loved one's health, but are they going to the doctor as often as they should? Are they going to the dentist as often as they should? Are they getting enough exercise? So it's very important to be aware of the physical aspects. You see the chart in front of you right now in terms of the social assessment. Socialization is really key to self-care. The caregiver needs to stay in touch with their friends, their family, their networks, and their social groups as best as possible. Are you getting enough face-to-face time with your friends? What are you doing to nurture your relationship with friends and family? Yes, you have to consciously plan how to nurture these relationships, and it's easy to say, I don't have the time, but consider your overall well-being and find the time. Figure out how you can carve out the time during the day or during the week or whatever time frame you can to be able to take care of yourself. In terms of the mental aspects of caregiving, mental self-care includes things like keeping your own mind sharp. Are you doing puzzles? Are you learning about a subject that fascinates you? Are you, regardless of what the subject may be, you could be doing crossword puzzles, but you need to keep your mind as active as possible. In terms of the emotional, and yes, mental, psychological self-care and emotional self-care are related, but they're not the same. Emotional self-care involves your coping skills. So what are you doing to promote healthy coping in terms of the aspects of your life? How do you process your emotions? Are you aware of the fact that being a caregiver can make you very angry? And then because you're angry, you realize that your loved one is not doing this purposely, so then you feel guilty for getting angry. So how do you deal with those feelings? Is there somebody that you can talk to help you process those feelings? Presbítera, maybe you'd like to talk about some of the spiritual aspects of self-care.
I suppose from just my experience, it wasn't always easy for me to be fully participating in the life of the church as I had wished, because of my son's medical needs. But confession and receiving Holy Communion were my lifeline. So I would say definitely use the tools of the church. The sacramental life of the church will be your food, your sustenance. It will give you strength and fortitude to endure difficult times, and it will make the joys that much more joyful. And as you mentioned, Paulette, sometimes because of the stress load we have, we fall down. We lose our patience with our loved ones and everyone in our life because of the stress we're under. So we need to repent and we need to confess and take advantage of what the church has for us to make a clean slate. There's definitely tips about prayer, but I don't know if that's something we should talk about later, Father, or if I should go into that.
Well, what are some thoughts, Dora, you perhaps have on this question in terms of assessing one's physicals, all the things that are on this list? Is there anything that you would add from your own experience?
You know, I think one of the most important thing is maintaining social connections. What I found the most difficult during my caregiving journey is actually because I had, really very involved with friends and community and organizations, and I found that that's really been restricted just because of the, responsibilities of caregiving. And I noticed recently it was just, getting more difficult for me. And I sat down and, thought to myself, I need to take some action to change this. So I reached out to some of my siblings who could, fill in a little bit and stay with my mom more than they had been, or arranging more Zoom calls that maybe I couldn't physically be with them, but I was able to at least, keep up the relationships. And I think just, that's an important part. I think Paulette mentioned the importance of maintaining the social connections. I think it's extremely important. And also seeing, where can I take my mom more with me to some of the, because it was good for her to get out. Maybe going to the church a little more often, which she enjoyed. Just, I think, being in touch with your own self and your own feelings and seeing where, you're starting to feel uncomfortable, and being able to reach out to people that that can help you, alleviate some of the burden.
I want to go back
in terms of the reaching out aspect, Father, hold on, there's one thing I'd like to mention. In terms of reaching out, as Dora said, she has siblings, she has sisters,
yeah.
And they're sharing the responsibility. I too have a sister, and in terms of our caregiving responsibilities, we share the responsibility with my mom. In terms of my current caregiving responsibility with my adult children. The thing though is that that's another thing that could cause anger in the caregiver. They ask the sibling to do something or to help out, and the sibling doesn't respond. And the reason that they may not respond, that the caregiver really needs to be aware of, is A, they may not know what to do. They may not know what to expect. And you may need to be a little bit more specific about what it is that you would like them to do. If it's your mom that is needing the care, you can say to a family member, can you take her to get her hair done or to get a manicure? That's something very specific and time limited. If it's whether it's your mom or your dad, you can say, can you spend some time with him or with her and read the newspaper together? Especially if it's somebody who was very aware of what's going on in society, but because of their vision impairments, they may not be able to read the newspaper anymore, or at least as much as they used to. This is something very specific that you can ask of your family member. And these are very doable kinds of things, and they're very realistic, and they are very helpful. Because during the time that your sibling is taking your mom to get her hair done or to get a manicure, or somebody's reading the newspaper with your parent, you have the time to pick up the phone and talk to a friend. Or you have the time to go and get a manicure yourself and just spend some time like that. But the family dynamics are something that caregivers really need to be aware of in terms of how it impacts their ability as a caregiver and why the sibling or the other family member isn't stepping up to the plate the way you would like them to. Bottom line is they're not going to step up to the plate the way you want them to. They're going to step up to the plate and do what it is that they can do. But you can help them with that by being very specific about what it is that the person actually needs.
And, to add to that, I think good communication is key, because I think we all need to remember, after our parents are gone, we're going to still have our siblings, and maintaining that relationship is really very important. And I've seen situations where, because there was some resentment and there wasn't open communication, that those relationships were frayed. When they could, it could have been avoided, I think, with better communication. And I think we need to be aware of that on our own feelings. Like, if we're the principal caregiver, when we start feeling frustrated or we need that break, being able to communicate openly with our siblings and other family members can make a big difference, because we don't want to jeopardize those really important family relationships after our parents are gone. We want to, they're going to be what we have.
Okay, very good advice. We are in the Advent season as we are recording this live and preparing ourselves for the Nativity. Are there perhaps specific practical tips for caregiving during holidays?
Well, I can begin to tackle that, and other people can, chime in. I think it's important to look at the care receiver's routine. If it's someone, an elderly parent or relative who gets agitated in the evening with sundowning, or they're used to eating early, try to work around their schedule so that they, can be the most comfortable. And ask relatives and friends for help with setting up, because being a caregiver and also taking care of all the cooking and the preparation and whatever, if you're hosting it, can be daunting. So maybe ask people to bring a dish or bring something, or something they can do to help. Also, preparing your loved one is also important. Maybe talk to them beforehand about who will be attending, what the celebration is. If they're having memory issues, maybe show them some photos of people who will be attending so that they can, be a little more prepared. And prepare your guests if there are things that they might be surprised if they haven't seen your loved one in a while. There may be changes that they're not aware of. So maybe it might be a good idea to have some conversation beforehand, and fill them in on, some things that some changes that they might not be aware of, so that they're a little bit more prepared. And keep your loved one involved, involve them in the preparations. Talk to them about it, so that, ask them as much as they can for their preferences. And have a quiet space available for them if it gets to be too much, so that they can take a brief break. Because I don't know about your family, but my family can be very lively and fun-loving, and laughing a lot during our get-togethers. But it can be a bit much for someone who might not be feeling that well. So be aware, get your antennas up, and see if they might need a break just for a little while to get them, then they can come back and enjoy it.
Very
It's
good.
also important not to try to recreate the memories that you have from your own childhood, because times were different then and times are different now. So think about the new ways that you can celebrate the holidays. And if you're the one who's hosting, if the caregiver is the one who's hosting, keep in mind that the reason that you may be hosting is because your loved one may be more comfortable in their own familiar surroundings rather than bringing them to somebody else's home. And you do have more control over the environment if it's in your own home. And as Dora said, ask the people who are coming to the holiday celebration to pitch in and do something. And ask your loved one if they always prepared a certain dish, they may be able to at least put together the ingredients for that. Another thing that I think is very important at holiday times is music. And I remember when there was the special on television with Tony Bennett and Lady Gaga. It was really amazing because in the end stages of Tony Bennett's Alzheimer's, he remembered the words to all of his songs, and he remembered who Lady Gaga was. So music is another way that you can engage your loved one in terms of the holiday celebration. You also may want to ask, as Dora said, the people coming to your celebration may not be aware of what to expect when it comes to the condition that your loved one is in now. So one of the things that you might think about doing is there's a beautiful poem that starts out with, "Do not ask me to remember." It starts after it says, "Do not ask me to remember." They say, "I can't help the way I'm acting. The best of me is gone." And it ends with, "Please don't fail to stand beside me. Love me till my life is done." And that poem is really a beautiful way to introduce your guests and your family members about what to expect when it comes. And don't push the person with Alzheimer's to remember who the person is. I've had situations where a person says to their parent, "Oh, come on, you know who this person is. You've known them your entire life. This is Dora. How can you tell me you don't know who Dora is anymore?" Well, the reality is they don't. They don't remember who Dora is anymore. So rather than say, "Of course you remember who Dora is," introduce her. "This is Dora. Dora, who we've known for many years," and just be a little more gentle and thoughtful about how you, I guess, speak to the fact that your loved one doesn't have the memory that they used to have.
I know in my parents' later years, photo albums were also a really important way of making connections, or maybe triggering a memory, or just helping them to feel more comfortable, because it's people and situations that are familiar to them. President Melanie, on this topic in terms of holidays, thoughts that you may have?
A couple things come to mind. I would say, I remember when Michael was little and we would be at extended family gatherings. It's okay to feel disappointed if your child isn't engaging with their cousins the way you want them to. Part of this process of dealing with special needs is just acceptance. You know, we're all unique. Michael has shown signs after the fact, so he's with his family members and you wouldn't even realize that he's enjoying it. And then we come home and he pulls up pictures of them or videos of them and replays it. So it's a sign that he does enjoy it. He loves it. He loves them. He doesn't show it in typical ways. So I would say learn to accept that we all have limitations, including our loved ones with disabilities. And when we set that stage, our extended family will feel our peace with the situation and will be more open to interacting with our loved one. So a lot of it has to do with the way the parents interact with their child, sets the stage for the extended family. And I also, if there are times that you can't join in large celebrations, don't feel guilty about that. If your child needs extra quiet, if it's just going to be a nightmare if you push through it. I've done it and it is a nightmare. So it's better to stay home and have a quiet Christmas with just your immediate family. And that's beautiful too. I mean, the first Christmas was very quaint, right? Wasn't a big hustling, bustling feast. It was in a cave with the baby born and laid in a feeding trough. So simplicity is okay and quiet is okay. And just trying to accept our own limitations and our family members' limitations.
And ordering is okay also.
Absolutely.
Not cooking a massive feast.
Right.
That's right.
We don't
So
have
start
to
calling from now to find out what restaurants in your area are open on Christmas and do they deliver?
Yep. Our Jewish friends and
Yeah.
President, I
One
want to
of the
return
other
to
things that's
something.
difficult around holidays is if a loved one passes away either during or near holiday time, whether it's the current year or in previous years. There's no right way to honor a loved one who has passed away at the celebration, but what was it that made that person special to you and to your guests? If there was a special dish that the person made, can you include that in your menu? Do you want to consider having a moment of silence or a prayer to honor that person before everybody sits down to dinner? Consider asking one or two guests, an adult and a child, an older child, to say a few words about what made that person special to them. Perhaps a grandchild can talk about their grandparent, and a sibling may talk about their parent. And don't be surprised if it is a sibling that they tell you something that you had no idea about, because siblings have different relationships with their parents. They have different memories. My sister and I frequently, when we speak about growing up, we look at each other and say, did we really grow up together or did we grow up next door to each other? So we have totally different memories about what we thought was the same thing. But
you say that because that happened. There are four of us, four sisters, and two grew up in the city and two on the island. And when my dad passed away, I was putting together a video for the funeral home, and we were all choosing photos. And it was so funny because my older sister and I had such different memories from my younger sisters. And we were looking at each other. Is this the same person?
Did we have the same parents? Let alone,
Yes.
Different perspectives, sure. President, I want to return to something you had begun earlier about spiritual resources, and you had spoken about confession and some other things, but I know we didn't have a chance to develop that further. Anything more that you would add in terms of spiritual resources that caregivers might refer to?
sometimes my fellow caregivers will say, I don't have time to pray. I wake up, I hit the ground running, and how do I carve out this time? And because what I'd like to say is that your life is a prayer. Your life is an offering to God. In your caring for your loved one, you are offering the best of yourself to another human being. You're sacrificing, and it is a prayer. However, there are realities that we do need to be fed spiritually in prayer. And if anyone's ever attended a monastery, you might see people, the monks, repeating, Lord have mercy, Kyrie eleison, Lord Jesus Christ, have mercy on me. And it's a short prayer. We wear prayer ropes to remind us. Sometimes I even just say it out loud. I find myself saying, Lord Jesus, have mercy on us throughout the house, to just call his presence into a difficult situation or stressful situation. So we can just use certain prayers that are short, or Holy Theotokos, pray for us. Turn to the saints when we aren't inclined to pray. Ask them to pray for us. You know, she was a mother. She understood that her child's life was different than she probably expected. She understands and she can pray for us. Other saints that we're drawn to are angels. And I also think there's a story from the book Father Arseni that kind of illustrates that our life is a prayer. There's a true story of an older woman who was written about in the book, and she was bedridden at the time. And people had recognized that she had a holiness about her and visited her. And when Father Arseni, I think, was talking to her and asked her, what is your secret? How did you pray? And she said, oh, I never prayed. I was always just so busy taking care of my children and my grandchildren. And then this one got sick and I took care of that person. And I would just have enough time to say thank you in the morning and Lord, thank you in the evening. And I would fall asleep saying my prayers. And she said, so I'm really not a very prayerful person. And the message, I don't remember exactly how it was written, but Father Arseni said that was one of the holiest women he had ever met, because she lived her life in service to others. Her life was like a prayer, not forsaking God and thinking she could do it on her own strength, but serving out of love.
Great, thank you. So all three of you are involved in very important ministries that involve support groups. I want to give each of you an opportunity to talk about these support groups, to perhaps offer some links or websites or places that those who are listening might be able to tap into, so that they can take advantage of these important support groups, either for themselves or for their loved ones. Paulette, can you begin in terms of some of the resources that you're familiar with and involved in?
Sure. Philoptochos has been conducting support groups since 2018. We first started out with running a support group for patients who were actively cancer patients. From that, though, we realized, as Dora said earlier, that caregiving was an issue that kept coming up in terms of the work that I was doing as the social services director for National Philoptochos. And we realized that there really wasn't very much that people were able to turn to as Orthodox Christians. And that's when we decided that we would start conducting caregiver support groups. Because of COVID, we first started running them over the telephone, but then we graduated to running them over Zoom, which made it really both over the telephone and well as Zoom, we were able to reach out to people throughout the country. It was not something that people had to come to our office or come to a location. We had participants, and we have participants from Maine to Hawaii. We've had spouses, we've had adult children, we've had siblings, we've had husband and wife teams. It really has been an incredible experience for us, as well as we believe, for the people who are participating. The support groups are facilitated both by Dora and me, and we actually play off of one another because each of us has different skills and different backgrounds in terms of caregiving. So we organize them in a way that they're either 6 weeks or 8 weeks. Each week, there's a different topic. However, depending on the needs of the people who are participating in the group, we obviously are flexible in terms of addressing their specific needs. As a faith-based ministry, the final session of each of our support groups recognizes the fact that we are a faith-based ministry. And Father Harry Pappas from Stamford, Connecticut, Presbytera Carey's husband, is our closer. And he is absolutely incredible because he's able to tie everything together in terms of many of the spiritual aspects that Presbytera Melanie mentioned, but also in pointing out to people that prayer is not going to solve their problems. Prayer is not going to make their care receiver or their loved one well or improve them in some way, but prayer gives us the strength to deal with whatever it is that we're facing. It gives us the resilience so that we can move forward with love towards our loved one, as well as towards ourselves. I mean, the name of this is Love Thyself. We have to love ourselves, otherwise we're going to be terrible caregivers. And we can't make believe that we love ourselves. We can't make believe that we love our loved one. It has to be real. And prayer is one of the ways that we can strengthen that ability. We do plan on having a support group starting in the beginning of the coming year. I'm not sure it's going to be in January or in February, but we can send out a notice to you that we hope that you'll publicize. We also distribute both secular and spiritual resources to our participants to support the discussions that we have during our groups. And most of the documents are posted on the Philoptochos website, which is www.philoptochos.org. And under the social services drop-down menu, there's a thing that says resources, and within that, caregiver support is listed. So for example, in terms of the spiritual resources, Father Harry has identified several Psalms, and we have them posted both in English and in Greek, starting out with Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd. Psalm 31, in you, O Lord, I seek refuge. And we go through many additional Psalms. He also has books that he recommends and readings from the fathers of the church. In terms of the secular resources, we provide information about if you need an aid for your loved one, how do you find an aid? What resources are available? Who can you turn to in order to help find an aid? And if you're going to interview the person, which we definitely recommend, what kinds of questions do you need to ask of the person? Dora, do you want to add to it?
I think the biggest benefit from the support group, first of all, when we first announced it, we thought we might get like 10, 12 participants. We were overwhelmed. We had like 100 people expressed interest, and we wound up having to do 2 sessions. But I think the overwhelming benefit that many of them mentioned was that they felt they were not alone, that being able to share their feelings and their experiences with people from their community was invaluable. And
but confidentially.
Yes,
in a confidential setting.
Yes. They gained strength from each other, and shared many resources, a lot, and I think that was the biggest benefit. Plus, the resources that Paulette has put together are outstanding. I encourage you to view them on the website. They were very helpful. I would encourage, it was only 5 or 6 weeks, and it was like an hour and a half. And the benefits were great. I think the overwhelming response was very positive. So I would encourage people to join a support group.
Okay, thank you. So President Melanie has a different field of people that that she's involved in terms of caregiving. Can you give us some background?
Right. So a few years ago, when we launched the Fully Human Ministry, we put out some surveys, and out of that survey, we asked if a support group would be of interest to anyone. There were about 40 people that responded that they would like to join a support group. It was a mix of people with disabilities and those who are caregivers. So we trained, Father Alex trained peer support groups to make small groups that would grow in trust of one another, that had like experiences. It was difficult, but we launched a pilot program. Of that program, I believe there's only my my small group still in existence. One of the challenges we've had with these virtual meetings is scheduling. It's difficult to get people whether in different time zones and with work schedules and caregiving schedules. So that's been kind of challenging. But what I can say from the group that remains with us and that we've added to want to keep it about 8 people is we've formed such a bond of trust and love for one another. We pray together. We are honest with each other. There's confidentiality. It's a no judgment zone. And like Dora and Paulette said, we really need that solidarity. Of course, with our Fully Human Ministry, we try to provide other resources for people other than peer groups, podcasts and articles and that kind of thing. So that we have a wealth of things on the Fully Human page and that we share on Facebook for caregivers and people who have disabilities. But
what's the contact so they can reach out to that, President?
Okay.
Where can they find this information?
Right. So you can email me if you're interested in a peer group participation. It is presmelanie@goarch.org. And I can put you in touch with that. And off of the GoArch website, if you look for Center for Family Care, you will also see a section for the Fully Human Ministry. And it will take you to our webpage, the Fully Human webpage.
And in terms of the caregiver support groups, if people are interested in participating in our upcoming ones, they can email me at pauletteg@philoptochos.org, and I will let them know when the upcoming one is coming. We do ask people to pre-register because we want to make sure that the person is a current caregiver and not somebody seeking information about a past experience that they may have had, because it changes the characteristics of the group if not everybody is an active caregiver. So we do try to find out questions such as if they're caregiving for a parent, for a sibling, for an adult child, or whomever. And in the past, we have split up the groups to focus solely on elderly parents versus siblings or spouses. Because again, even though there are similarities in terms of the caregiving, in terms of some of the things that people are facing, there are differences. So we try to make these support groups as relevant as possible. But as Dora said before, they're 6 to 8 weeks. And I think we're going to focus on 6 weeks in the future.
Okay. Ladies, we're coming to the close of our time together. Are there any final thoughts, any other final words of encouragement to our listeners?
Well, I think one of the important things in terms of caregiving is for people to understand that they're not alone, that the church has not forsaken them, that there are resources within the church that they can reach out to that will help them in their journey as caregivers. And also, when Dora and I do our groups, we make it a point to tell people that we're not perfect. We don't have the answers to everything. And we want them to share information about things that they have learned as caregivers, because part of the importance of a support group is for people to share experiences and share information, because something that I may have faced and that I figured out how to deal with, somebody else may be having the same kind of experience, and whatever I say can help them get through it as well. But just in terms of prayer, it really is important for people to understand that prayer is something for them. It's not going to change who their loved one is. It's not going to make their loved one well. That's not the purpose of prayer. It's kind of like forgiveness. We don't forgive to tell the other person, oh, it's okay, whatever you did to me. We forgive for ourselves so that we can move on, so that we don't carry the burden of whatever the challenge was that we faced.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
And I think, it may, seem insurmountable at times or difficult, but I think, we as caregivers will cherish the time that we had with our loved one and the memories we create and the experiences that we're able to share. And, just to think about that, and also that you aren't alone, that, the community is here to support you, and it's an important source of strength on many levels.
Thank you. Presidenta, final word?
Sure. My mind just went blank. I had something to say and it left me. But
We rendered you speechless.
You did. I'm sorry, I'm starting a shutdown. So I definitely wanted to say that self-care does not mean you are selfish. So, so many times we think making time to exercise or time to eat properly or to pray or to do something mentally stimulating. Like I could feel tension in myself if I'm doing a puzzle because I'm like, oh, I should be doing something else for my child. But we need those things to be balanced human beings. And when we feel ourselves off balance, it's not selfish to take care of ourselves. We really need to do that. It's critical. And our loved ones, prayer will change us, self-care will change us, and our loved ones will feel it. When I'm at peace, my son is at peace. When he feels my emotions, when I'm anxious, he gets anxious. So it's catchy. So we do have to care for ourselves so that our loved ones will have the peace that we all crave.
Great. We've been blessed to be listening and watching. Paulette, Theodora, President Melanie, thank you for your insights, your words of encouragement. For those who are viewing, if you know family and friends who would benefit from this webinar, please let them know that within a week, this webinar will be archived. It will be available through Philopticos as well as through the Center for Family Care Facebook page. Thank you and God bless.